Hi, my friend, it's Pat Sloan here, and our last day of the month of July, we have our Tidy Up Challenge. So I started thinking, what would be a good challenge to finish up the month of July? And because I did a lot of scrapalicious things, I think it would be nice to challenge you, and maybe myself, today to look at our scraps and determine if we are using the space for them efficiently. Are they just dumped someplace in a basket? Are they dumped, like jammed into bags? If you have stuff jammed into bags, it takes up a lot more space than if you just laid them flat. It's not like you have to go and iron them everything. Just get them out of the bag and lay them flat and put them back in. You will see they take up so much less space. You might also have been saving maybe a size of fabric that you have never ever used. Like some people like to cut it into sizes. So if you are one of those, and take a look today and see, well, yeah, I am using that, or like, no, I've cut these 1.5 inch squares and I have never used them. So then, you move them on so that you don't have them taking up precious space in your home, because we want you to have your most efficient workspaces. At least that's what I like. I mean, I don't want stuff being bulky when it could be compressed down just by tidying it up and laying the things flat, laying the pieces of fabric flat. Try it. Just try it. I should have a baggie sometime and show you the difference. For another day. Okay, I want to go a little bit back over the basket of blooms. Probably what I should have done yesterday on the video, because yesterday was one of those days. I tape these every day for the most part. I don't tape a bunch of them on one day. I'm taping the day before you see it. And just like you, some days are great days, other days you're on the struggle bus for whatever reason it might be. And to be very honest, yesterday I had a massive headache. I have some of my neck is bothering me, so I've gotten exercises for that, and doing those gave me a headache. And I had not anticipated that, so when I got ready to do the video, it was, I was not on my A game. And so if you were making the quilt and you noticed in the video, the leaves were somewhat gigantic. They weren't the right size because I didn't pre-cut them down to the size they were supposed to be. And I didn't notice that until 10 p.m. yesterday evening. When I sat down to start working, I was going to sew for about a half an hour, and I looked at these leaves and I'm like, these are totally the wrong size. I didn't cut them down from the Charm Pack square. So that is what real life is like, particularly when you're struggling and not at your best. It's hard to read directions, and so sometimes you just need to not do it. But because I'm doing daily videos, I did it anyway. And so now I have to show you that these were the leaves I showed you, which were massively big. So I had to cut out the size that it was supposed to be. And so now I want to show you that and a couple other things. So here we have the top part now of the basket of blooms. So here's the pattern, and now I'm like, all good. I don't have giant leaves the size of the flowers, which would be super cool, but not fitting into the space for the quilt. Now there are stems here, and this actually, the basket is further down, as you see, and then there's stems that come up, right? Like this, there's a center stem and the stems that come up. So I want to talk to you about those two stems, because they are sew and flip, but you have to be on your A game because you don't want to make them identical. They need to be reversed. So like this one goes on this side, and then when I'm doing the other one, it will need to be turned eventually to be like that. So just when you're playing around with it, just be thinking what you're doing. So here is the square. The process for getting this is to sew. You're going to sew straight corner to corner, corner to corner. And here is this one. I didn't cut it away, so you can see I did corner to corner. And then when you would flip it, now the whole square stays the same size as that green one. It never changes. So I would have this open, and then the other side would have been all green. Okay, so like this. There you go. See? And then you take the smaller one, and it goes on the other side. And again, you're sewing corner to corner, and that will fold across to be like this. So here's the second one, corner to corner. Now I have not trimmed away these parts, but I will do that next. Not here, but that's the next process. So these will be ready, and then I can work on getting the center part sewn up. I do want to tell you that I had cut some wide strips from the pattern, but I hadn't subcut all the smaller pieces, so that's what I did last night as well. And then these are all need to be subcutted to do the scallop. So one of the things that I kind of observed last night when I was working on this is that I probably wish I had taken the pattern and subcut everything. So since I was sewing in sort of sections right now, I would just allocate enough time in a week, to sew one section. Not having it subcut meant that I had to rethink back into the pattern again, because I didn't write this pattern, and so I had to rethink things. And that was a waste of time. If I had cut everything in advance and used all the alphabetties, which are these little markers, which are super fabulous, so I just clip them on there. Next time, when I'm doing a pattern like this, I will do this subcutting first, and then go on to just sew in parts. That way I know where I'm at, I know that it's cut, I trust that I cut it, and I don't waste time rereading the direction every week. So that was a learning thing for me, because I've been doing so many samplers, and that not like a picture quilt like this broken down. Okay, the August calendar, I don't have it to show you because I'm in process while I'm videoing this to get it done. So today is the 31st, and it is, if it's not up, it will be later in today. So check over in the link below. All the links are below. Yes. And the other thing I'm going to do today, I'm going to take the Liberty Box guy, and I'm going to take this project and cut it up, just like I described what I was doing for the Basilisk Blooms. I'm going to cut this whole thing up so that I can just sew, but I want to cut it all at once rather than trying to, just do the heart or whatever. Yeah, that's a good, I think that's a good plan for these type of projects for me. Now, it might work differently for you, but for me, I think that's what's going to work best. All right, Kimberly at the Fat Quarter Shop made an announcement for the Make-A-Wish. How much money was raised? It is outstanding, just outstanding. You are an amazingly generous community. She and her husband Kevin are amazingly generous. Moda Fabrics, also Mark Dunn, the owner, donated to Make-A-Wish for this event like he has done for years. So it was $120,000 and $120,037. I mean, just crazy good. Down below again is a link to the article at the Fat Quarter Shop where it shows you some of the children whose wishes were granted. Now, I don't know if they've just been granted or what it is, but they're all there. They're just darling, just wonderful, wonderful. One little girl, she's waiting for her wish, but they tell her what's coming, and they show you this little chart that she's done. It's just so cute. Okay, we had a question that I thought was, first, let me show you Lois over in our community, Quilt Along with Pat Sloan at Facebook. If you're not there, once again, link is below, but you must come over because Lois did what I would call the ultimate upcycle challenge for herself. And the link is right to the article so that you can look at it. But what Lois did was she bought a bunch of aprons. So here is, they thrifted. She thrifted a whole bunch of aprons, and then she challenged herself to make a bunch of quilts with them. And she didn't just make squares. I mean, she made some spectacular quilts like this one with these aprons. So when you go over there give her some love for this challenge because, man, this was a cool one. She did like such a neat job. Okay, so the question I had a Q&A question today, and I thought it would be fun. This was from Jane, and Jane asked about mixing neutrals, like mixing beige, white, cream, gray. How does that work, mixing those up? So I think that's a kind of a question that's too broad. It's too all-encompassing, because for me, mixing white and gray and cream all depends on the pattern. It depends on what I'm going to put them into, how they'll play together. You know, I can't just say, to me, the way my brain works is I can't just hold a pile like this and say, okay, you know, yeah, they're all gonna go together. It depends on the pattern. I also thought I would just show you a little bit here about what those backgrounds look like together. And so here's a lot of, like, this has got like a natural color on this one, and these are all more white. Here's like a pure white, and so these guys are kind of more in the pure white family. And then here is cream, and then here is sort of tan. And I also had these, where'd they go? I had some funky ones. Oh, these were ones that my friend sent me from Australia, and they have almost, they're like a gray background. They're like pinky. And so if you just put like these next to each other, you may like it, you may not. But it really doesn't tell me anything doing this about how they're going to work together in a quilt, because I don't know the quilt pattern. If I know the quilt pattern, that makes talking about this a whole lot different. Now, she also asked about gray, so I just pulled, you know, a handful of gray fabric, and it's the same deal, like white and gray. I think you can visualize white with everything, right? So it's really a matter of, do you like, let's see, like these guys, like, do you want to do a quilt block that has some florals and the little platypus guys? Here, we'll take the kangaroos. Whoops. Okay, so like, or the cockatiels, there we go. So like, I think those would go in a great block. You know, what does the block look like? Is there another color in the block? Will I be adding pinks and greens too? Like, does this go with this shade of gray? Here's a totally different shade of gray. Do you like it with that one? It's like, well, what are you gonna do with all of this? You know, here is a really light gray with flower pots. Now those, to me, just right away, I'm going, well, they don't really blend as well for me, and they're also both light. It's like it worked better when I got more contrast, so that might be a hint for you. But first of all, that looks great together. I mean, first of all, to make these work, and maybe your question, if Jane, maybe if you asked your question again where you narrowed it down some, I mean, do you have a pattern in mind that you're trying to put a bunch of different things into? What I find is that if I have smaller pieces in a bigger quilt, I can move around different shades and they sort of blend towards each other, versus a smaller quilt with big shapes. Then there's a hard contrast, go from, you know, from this to this next to each other, versus these being apart and smaller. So I'm not sure that that helped any. But if you have a more detailed question on this, like you're showing me a quilt block and showing me a group of fabrics that you're trying to put into that quilt block, or to make a quilt with that block, you know, block repeated, then I can be more specific to what you're working on. So if you have that, you can either tag me at the group, put along with Pat Sloan, or you could, that way everybody can enjoy it. That would be really good. All right. So take a look at your scraps. Make a little tidy up today of some sort with your scraps. Have a scrapalicious weekend, my friends. Mwah. We will be rolling into August. I love you. See you online. Mwah.